Hey, welcome back to the show. My name is Dustin Weaver. I'm your host. This is Certifying BS Podcast. We've got a great episode today. We're going to talk about what happens when you're winning and what do you do when you lose. Does your attitude change? Do you learn from a loss? What do you do? And when you're winning, are you an egotistical maniac? You know, where all of your humbleness has just left the room? So we're going to talk about the differences. I'm going to share some own experiences with it, and we'll have a great episode for you. So let's go. Okay, so welcome. All right, let's talk about winning first because it's fun. And I like to compare things to sports because I feel like those analogies really hit home for most people. But when you look at the statistics of a Super Bowl winning team, and you look at their ability to repeat, and there are teams that have done it, right? And they've done it with a lot of the same, that unit shows up and shows up and shows up every day for practice, for the games, after work, before work. The type of team that's the first one to get there and the last one to leave. And that's what it takes, an inspiring type of dedication to stay on top. But most of the time, and the statistics show this, that the team that won the Super Bowl normally has less than a 10 or 12% chance of repeating it the next year. So that's pretty low, and my question would be is why? Why do the statistics show that we can't win and have one win on top of another? And most of it comes down to effort. And there's an effect that we get when we win, right? We put all this work into a goal. We accomplish the goal, and then our mind kind of goes in overdrive. We forget all of the late nights and the early mornings that it took to get there. So we don't do the little extra things that got us to the win in the first place. And let me bring it back down to our everyday lives, right? As I started out building this business that I own today, I was up early, and I'm still up early today, but I was up early with a hunger and a fire to make something great happen. And the only way it did happen is that I kept knocking on doors, early mornings and late nights. Early mornings, late nights, Saturdays, Sundays. There were no days off. And that's how I look at the business today. You cannot take days off when you're in pursuit of your highest goals. And I don't mean that you can't take time off. If you have a family, you're going to have other responsibilities. You need to make your health a priority. But what I'm saying is that you've got to make your life the priority. There are no times in your life that you can just put it in cruise control and still get or become your best self. And that's what happens when we win. When we win, all those endorphins, they're out in our body, and we feel great. We feel like we're on top of the world, and we forget how much work we put into getting to the place we want it to be so bad. And that's why, and I think David Goggins says it a lot, which is once you get to the top of the mountain, there's only one way, and that's down. And a lot of people come way down that mountain because they all of a sudden become part-timers. They're not putting in the same amount of effort. They think it should just come. They become entitled. And if you get that mentality, then you're going to find the other side of it really quickly, because it takes a resolve that is beyond measure to continually win day after day after day. So some of the things that I do is that it's all in the little steps. It's in the little steps of how you wake up in the morning, how you go to bed at night, the thoughts that you have throughout the day, the conversations that you're having with yourself, the prayers that you're praying. And I don't want anyone to think that the prayers are not give me, give me, give me. The prayers are to be thankful for what you have, because having contentment is one way to have, I think, to strengthen your resolve and your discipline. And then that will carry on through all of the functions of your life. So being content with where you're at, what you've done, and what you've accomplished is not negative. That's a positive way to live. Now, contentment, and I think a lot of you have heard this, is not complacency. You don't want to get complacent just because you have made it to a level that maybe you never thought was possible. Maybe you made it to a level no one in your family has ever made it to. Or maybe you've made it to a level that, frankly, you feel like an imposter. You feel like you don't even deserve to be there, but somehow you're there. And I just want everyone to remember that nothing happens by accident. Lord's plan puts us on a path, and through free will, we will fulfill that path. Now, I think I heard Joel Osteen say this the other day, that there are several types of free will. That there's free will where God gives us choices as we move towards our destiny, right? And we have the ability to affect how the destiny plays out. But there are some things that God has stored up for you and talents that He wants you to have and how He wants you to prosper. And that type of free will is guided by God to get you to a certain destination. And if we would all remember that and try to put those principles in place in our everyday life, your life would be so sweet. It's not going to be without challenges, because challenges affect every single person on this earth. You will never go without challenges or losses or failures in your life. And if that's your expectation, then you're constantly going to be bummed every time something happens, because something is always going to happen. Whether it's small or large, there are difficulties coming in your future. But there's a UFC fighter, Ramiro Raul, I think, and super heavy Brazilian accent. But he's a believer in Jesus Christ. And the one thing he says in an interview is that if you believe, and you see, meaning you have vision, you can achieve it. You can do it. If you believe it and you've got a vision for it, then you can do it. And he came up in extreme poverty. So, as I look at how do I stay at the top of my game, right? I've mastered a craft, and I try to use that to continually build the business and add value to our clients. But I only stay at the top by understanding that I still have a lot to learn. Mastery is this really long journey that never stops. Particularly my industry, the industry is constantly changing rapidly, whether it's laws, competition, the way that we handle contractors, the way we handle contracts, estimates, bids. But understanding that I've got to continually learn. I can never stay at one static place in time. I've got to continually fight to be my very best self and to continually learn and master my craft. And that's not only on the business world, but I've got to continue to self-study, right? I've got to understand my own emotions, my own breakdown. I've got to continue to strengthen my relationship with the Lord so that I can ask Him in times of desperation or times when I'm at the top, where do I need to go from here? Okay, winning's a lot of fun to talk about, but we got to talk about losing. So when you lose, are you learning? Can you take a loss and look at it as a learned experience? And that is extremely difficult to do. It's extremely difficult for everyone because pride, our ego, we don't like to lose. We don't like to lose. Heck, a lot of people don't even like to learn, right? So then you lost and you're expected to learn something. That can be difficult. You know, me personally, I have taken losses, right? Whether they were financial, in my career, in my relationships, I've taken losses. Have I handled them perfectly? No. But one guiding principle that I've tried to keep is learn from the experience. Takes one thing away from the experience that I can apply in the future. Because the worst thing you can do is take a loss, whether it's external or internal, and then continually repeat the internal mistakes over and over and over because you're not learning anything. So if you need to stop and reflect, and that's why I think prayer is so powerful, is because it does help you reflect on the everyday requirements of this life. And that is solving prayer. That's a humble understanding of who we are as humans, that we are going to mess up, and that the best opportunities that we have to become who we're supposed to be is through learning through experience. And that's what you can do during a loss. You know, I think about and I talk about, David Goggins and his training videos and some of the other I don't want to say motivational because yes, they're motivational to me because some of the things that they do seem superhuman. And I think if you look at it from that fact, like, wow, I could never accomplish something like that. But if you break it down into small pieces, you can see that the reason that they look at these challenges the way they do, and when you like, I had an injury recently, okay, and I'm in this. If you've watched some of the past videos, I'm in this sleeve today, and I have a lot more function of the arm now. I'm like back to 60%. So I can't get it directly straight. I've got a scar. Well, it's not yet a scar. It's actually the stitches and glue that are keeping the skin together on the back of my elbow. But it's probably 3 or 4 inches. I got full use of the hand. I can spin it again. I mean, I'm not as strong as I was, but I'm definitely fighting to be the best that I can be right now. I think a few more weeks, I'll have 95% back. I can't wait to get in the gym. I can't wait to start doing jiu-jitsu again. There's a lot of things. I'm going to do a video on my 30-day jiu-jitsu experience and then take it back to wrestling when I was younger and how the experience of just any combat sport is something that I feel men or boys need, because you need to control that side of yourself, and every man has got it in them. Okay, so back to where do we move on from losses? And I think the first thing to do outside of reflection is movement. I think once you've reflected that, hey, I made a mistake. I think this is what I'm going to do. Maybe I need to put a little more research in. Maybe I need to refine my craft a little bit more. Maybe I need to work on my relationships, right? But next is action. I think you need to put action steps behind your learned experience, right? Maybe you go take a class. So this year, I've taken 2 classes already. And in those classes, I learned a new skill set of the type of business that I run today. Those classes have netted $100,000 in extra revenue to the company just because of those 2 classes. And I got in the classes. I took 2 classes this year and 1 class last year, at the beginning of last year, because I wanted to continue to add value to my clients. And that was one way that I was weak in a certain skill set. So I took the class, learned the basics, started applying the basics, got a client, went back in, learned advanced techniques of this skill, went back, added another client, and now we're servicing clients in new ways adding new revenue, adding new value to them. And that's my thought is action. If you can put action behind your reflection and your learning experience after a loss, then you will always be on the better side of it. Classes are great. For me, going to the gym, getting in great shape, right? I think it's got to be a major priority for everyone, men, women, everyone. I think that if you want to go to the gym and you can get yourself fit, or you want to go on a run, or you want to start biking or cycling, if you want to play tennis, you want to play basketball, anything to get yourself moving, and I would add, I don't know if you follow the 75 Hard, but the 75 Hard is by Andy Friselli. It's the Real AF podcast. I highly recommend it. The guy is absolutely awesome. Runs a great company out of Missouri called First Form. Absolutely amazing group. Andy created the 75 Hard program because he saw that people needed a very difficult task to lock in changes in their mind. And part of that was, dieting, exercise. Exercise was broken down into two parts. Part of that exercise had to be outside, because when we get outside and we get that fresh vitamin D and we get the fresh air, right, of just being out, right, because we're inside so much, that it helps change chemical processes in the brain that we built up year after year after year. So action, put action behind, and you will be much, much better off. So whether you're winning or you've taken a loss, there is greatness in your future, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish. This is the Refined BS Podcast, signing off. Have a great